Men, as usual, we have your three hosts. You have myself, Tim. Hi. You have Lachlan.
Howdy.
And Ruben.
G'day.
Gentlemen, Plato, we are up to our second week of reading this book of Apology. And I read it last, I think. You two guys were reading it, and I saw comments coming through about it's awesome and all this sort of stuff. And this weekend we've been doing so much around my house. And this morning I had breakfast with an old boss of mine named Daniel. Shout out to Daniel, I know he listens. And I couldn't wait to read it, but I didn't get to read it until, I don't know, I started reading it maybe at 5 o'clock tonight. So, and dude, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. So I'm enjoying it. When did you guys get your reading in? I think you did yours yesterday morning, Lachlan. Is that right?
Yeah, that's my habit. Try and get to it on Saturday morning. So get in there first thing. Got to do it while I'm fresh. I get too tired trying to read late in the day, so got to do it first thing in the morning.
Right.
Well, the kids are all busy.
How about you, Ruben? When did you do your reading?
I read over it again this arvo, but I love this thing. Like I graze on it all the time. So
yeah,
I even had to listen to an audio version while I was mowing the lawn too. So
oh, nice.
You graze on it like Socrates at a buffet, huh?
You better believe it.
Well, that's so you're listening to the audiobook on YouTube, so you are getting it for free.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. All right,
I think it would be an insult to Socrates' memory if we paid for it. So
that's right.
I think you're onto something. Okay, beverage of choice this evening. So I'm again drinking an Italian beer. This is the Birra Moretti, and
very nice.
I had a 6-pack at the start of the day. Now I have one left. But I had a brother-in-law come over and he nicked a pair off me, so that's all good. How about you, Lachlan? What are you drinking?
Back on the G&Ts, so a nice Gordon's Mediterranean Orange. It's going down good.
Mediterranean Orange, is that the Socratic drink there?
Well, it's in the area, right? It's
yeah. And what are you down in there? What are you down in there, Rubes? I just saw a can.
Japanese beer, Kirin.
Kirin. That looks good. Is it? What's the
I
comparison?
know I say this every week, but that's what was on special. So.
Is it any good though?
No, it is. I don't think I've ever had a Japanese beer that I didn't like.
Yeah.
Or a Japanese whiskey for that matter.
They do alcohol very
well. Then again,
They're doing some pretty good gin.
There's not much alcohol that I don't like, so I mean, I'm probably not the best person to go with.
What gin are you drinking, Lachlan? Is it a brand?
This one's only a cheapie, actually. It's Gordon's.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I don't know. We've got a pretty big selection because, it's one of those things that you get to this sort of like middle-aged time of your life, and no one ever knows what to get you for a gift for any occasion, right? And so people just seem to keep buying my wife and I bottles of gin. So we've got quite a selection going on in the cupboard. So
that's a good present. That's a solid present. I would not be disappointed.
I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying I've got a good selection going on. So. Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we need to get into this next part of the book. So I might read. Where should I read to? Because we're in a bit more dialogue-y bit here.
I think there's a paragraph to kick off before we start getting into a bit of back and forward with the questioning.
Yes, I think I'll read that, and then we can do the dialogue bit up until the stoutly affirmation part, and we'll keep going. So, all right, I'll read this bit. See how we go. I have said enough in my defence against the first class of my accusers. I turn to the second class. They are headed by Miletus, that good man and true lover of his country, as he calls himself. Against these two, I must try to make a defence. Let their affidavit be read. It contains something of this kind. It says that Socrates is a doer of evil, who corrupts the youth, and who does not believe in the gods of the state, but has other new divinities of his own. Such is the charge. And now let us examine the particular counts. He says that I am a doer of evil, and corrupt the youth. But I say, O men of Athens, that Miletus is a doer of evil, and that he pretends to be in earnest, when he is only in jest, and is so eager to bring men to trial from a pretended zeal and interest about matters in which he really never had the smallest interest. And the truth of this I will endeavour to prove to you. Straight away with the trash talking there. Love it.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely.
Good man and true lover of his country, as he calls himself.
Love it. Love it.
That's so good.
Said no one ever.
Yeah, it's like that old thing of like not from the 2000s that people used to do. Yeah, it's, you can see he's warming up. He's limbering up. He's getting ready to have some swings.
Well, I think it's good. Like he's just kind of like recounting the charges that they're starting to, throw against him, and it's time to lay down some shade before we kick this puppy to the curb. So it's good. Nice setup, Socrates.
Lay down some shade. We should make an umbrella with Socrates' head on it. Lay some shade. The Socratic umbrella. Okay. Alright, so I'll read the next part up until the stoutly affirmation.
Sure. Sounds good.
Okay, here we go. Come hither, Miletus, and let me ask a question of you. You think a great deal about the improvement of youth? Yes, I do. Tell the judges, then, who is their improver. For you must know, as you have taken the pains to discover their corrupter, and are siding and accusing me before them. Speak then, and tell the judges who their improver is. Observe, Miletus, that you are silent, and have nothing to say. But is not this rather disgraceful, and a very considerable proof of what I was saying, that you have no interest in the matter? Speak up, friend, and tell us who their improver is. The laws. But that, my good sir, is not my meaning. I want to know who the person is, who, in the first place, knows the laws. The judges, Socrates, who are present in court. What, do you mean to say, Miletus, that they are able to instruct and improve youth? Certainly they are. What, all of them? Or some only, and not others? All of them. By the goddess here, that is good news. There are plenty of improvers then. And what do you say of the audience? Do they improve them? Yes, they do. And the senators? Yes, the senators improve them. But perhaps the members of the assembly corrupt them. Or do they too improve them? They improve them. Then every Athenian improves and elevates them, all with the exception of myself, and I alone am their corrupter. Is that what you affirm? That is what I stoutly affirm. Wow. Talk about doubling down and backing your lie. Like, wow.
Yeah, you think you'd be feeling like a bit of a git at this point, but no, I'm just sticking to my strategy, and that's that. It's just you, Socrates. Everyone else is awesome. Everyone's doing great things. You're the problem.
You can see his method though in there, can't you? Like you can see his old Socratic method. He's like, oh, well, you say this is bad. Well, tell me what's good then, because you must know what's good if you can tell me what's bad. Oh, wait, you can't really tell me that, can you? Where is... And you can see,
silence. you know.
And you can see Miletus like playing it up for the crowd, like because you got to remember there's a public forum. There's apparently like a large number of people there, and he can't at this point he can't go back on it. So he just doubles down, like Tim was saying. Eh?
Yeah,
Yep.
totally.
Yep.
It's great.
It's good, and you can kind of see like, oh, here we go, he's warming up. But where he goes next, I think, is brilliant.
Totally.
So I'll be ready to read the next part.
Let's do it.
All right, okay, let's go. I am very unfortunate if you are right. But suppose I ask you a question. How about horses? Does one man do them harm and all the world good? Is not the exact opposite the truth? One man is able to do them good, or at least not many. The trainer of horses, that is to say, does them good, and others who have to do with them rather injure them. Is that not true, Miletus, of horses, or of any other animals? Most assuredly it is, whether you and Anytus say yes or no. Happy indeed would be the condition of youth, if they had one corrupter only, and all the rest of the world were their improvers. But you, Miletus, have sufficiently shown that you never had a thought about the young. Your carelessness is seen in your not caring about the very things which you bring against me. And now, Miletus, I will ask you another question. By Zeus I will. Which is better, to live among bad citizens, or among good ones? Answer, friend, I say. The question is one which may be easily answered. Do not the good do their neighbours good, as the bad do them evil? Certainly. I'll pause there. And go back here. There we go.
He goes to the horses, huh?
What's
It's like,
Socrates
did you know
as well?
that dogs are philosophers? It kind of reminds me of that
Yeah.
from the Republic. It's just this random, oh, let's talk about an animal.
Well, he always has to bring up another situation to relate the same thing and break it down. He does that all the time. So it's yeah, I think like Rubes was saying before, he's just gone straight into the Socrates playbook and is starting to strum the chords he knows.
That's true.
Yeah. I think it's a
But in
great
this section,
example.
yeah. My takeaway from that is he's like, well, you just said that everyone is like making things better. You know, like, yeah, sorry. Go.
No, you're right. Like, he's like, really? Is that true? Like, is there any other example where that's the case? Let's look at horses.
Yeah, and that's right. He's like, well, and if everyone's making everyone better, then why is there anyone being led astray? It's like,
Yeah.
what difference does one person make if everyone is doing the good?
Yeah, I think he's just trying to point out the pure absurdity of the statement that was laid out because it's just clearly untrue, and he's it's almost mocking the example that he's using there. Like,
It's exactly
let me
what he's
show you.
doing.
Yeah, let me show you how stupid you are.
Yeah. And he's like, deny it. Like, come on. That's how we go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think it's great that he calls it out at the end, though. Too, he's just basically saying like, you don't actually care about any of this. You're just grandstanding, you dick.
You just
Yeah,
want
exactly.
me wrong. Yeah. And you can see he's fired up because he just goes into the next question. I'm going to ask you another question. By Zeus, I will.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love how he's like, by the gods that you say I don't believe in, I'm going to do this thing.
Yeah, he's rubbing that in.
Yeah, no, I really dig that part. I feel like in life I need to start thinking of more farmyard animal analogies to defend my points of view. Because in the Republic, it's, did you know dogs are philosophers? And now in this, it's, horses only have, a very small amount of people that do them good. I'm like, I need animal analogies. So I was thinking, like, what's an Australian animal analogy? Maybe I need to find an analogy relative to budgies.
I've got one that I use quite regularly.
Oh, okay, let's hear it.
don't train up a guard dog and then get upset when it bites someone.
Not bad.
I use that every time you hear, like, when people complain about soldiers doing bad things in a war situation. It's like, well, don't train up a guard dog, and then if someone comes in your yard and they bite them, don't get upset. Like, it's what you train them for.
Yep. You just made me think of another old saying, but I'll leave that one. That's all good. All right. So with the other question that he asked, what do you guys think about that? Which is better, to live among bad citizens or among good ones?
Well, it's an obvious question, right?
Yeah, and I think that's what he's basically sort of saying. It's easily answered because of course you want to be around good neighbours, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's both rhetorical and he's just setting him up. Like, he's just setting up for the next thing.
Yeah.
So I remember when I read this little bit, because it's just before turning the page, I wasn't sure where he was going with this. It wasn't immediately obvious like it was with the horse thing. I was like, where is he going with this? So let's find out. We'll turn the page and find out. And is there anyone who would rather be injured than benefited by those who live with him? Answer, my good friend. The law requires you to answer. Does anyone like to be injured? Certainly not. And when you accuse me of corrupting and deteriorating the youth, do you allege that I corrupt them intentionally or unintentionally? Intentionally, I say. But you have just admitted that the good do their neighbours good, and the evil do them evil. Now, is that a truth which your superior wisdom has recognized thus early in life? And am I, at my age, in such darkness and ignorance as not to know that if a man with whom I have to live is corrupted by me, I am very likely to be harmed by him? And yet I corrupt him, and intentionally, too, so you say, although neither I nor any other human being is ever likely to be convinced by you. But either I do not corrupt them, or I corrupt them unintentionally, and on either view of the case, you lie. If my offence is unintentional, the law has no cognizance of unintentional offences. You ought to have taken me privately, and warned and admonished me, for if I had been better advised, I should have left off doing what I only did unintentionally. No doubt I should. But you would have nothing to say to me and refuse to teach me. And now you bring me up in this court, which is a place not of instruction but of punishment.
I think it's a solid argument. What do you guys reckon?
You go first, Lachlan.
Yeah, look, I think the tie-in to it being intentional or unintentional, I think, was the stroke of brilliance there, really. The good and bad neighbor sort of bit I can kind of cop. But I think, if it's ignorance or, he's intentionally out there, I guess he does sort of make a good point there that, if he's pissing everybody off around him, surely someone would be saying something to him, right?
Yeah, he's basically saying, I might be wrong, but I'm not a liar, if that makes sense. He's saying, yeah, okay, you might say things that are bad for people around you, but you're not going to do that on purpose. Because if you are doing it on purpose, you're doing it for some gain, for some good. And it's just that your perception of that good might be wrong.
Yeah,
so he's saying, and I won't shoot ahead, but he makes, that's really significant with what he says next.
I'm not sure what I think about it, because I don't know. One of the distinctions of the New Testament teachings is to love thy neighbour and to turn the other cheek. So, and obviously another part is when Peter cuts off the ear of the guard that comes to arrest Christ, Jesus says, put the sword away. Those who live by the sword die by the sword. So I've got that sort of in one side of my head as I read this, like, if I do things to my neighbour, why would I do bad things? Because I know they're going to retaliate to me. But then the other side of my head, I'm like, it's in our nature to do violence to each other, and hence live by the sword, die by the sword. I don't know how to make those two things balance in my head at the moment. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Like I probably didn't
I
explain
do.
that very well.
No, I follow what you're saying. I, I think there's some credence to what you're saying there, and maybe to give that some weight, if we're going to take that argument, that sort of side of it, you could sort of say that the way Athens was at that point in time, um, it was pretty common to be screwing people over, the same as probably what it is now, right? And this is why the Republic was something that was sort of put together, right? Because this is like what is stronger, the good, or seeking to just mete out your own sort of you know justice for your personal gain, right? And I think the thing is that he knows that Athens is pretty corrupt and that people are looking out for themselves rather than the good, and so probably will screw their neighbor. So maybe it is a bad argument. I don't know.
Well,
If you look at
maybe
like Socrates or something, he'd be like, "Hell yeah, I'm screwing my neighbor over. I'm screwing all my neighbors over."
yeah. So that's what I
Well,
was
I
about to
think
say. Maybe. Okay, Rube, go.
no, I think it's typical of Socrates, right?
Hmm.
It's a bad argument if you're talking about practicality and reality, which is the whole thing about the Republic, right? It's
Yeah,
like, yeah, okay, if what do they say? There's a word, something, if wishes were something, you know what I mean? Like, if it was a perfect world, yeah, sure,
Yeah,
maybe that's going to work, but it's not. You got to deal with reality, and I think that comes back here. He's right in the abstract, in the sense that what he's saying is correct, like logically,
yeah.
but it
And
doesn't take into account the realities that people are selfish and stupid. But I think where it still stands up even to that argument is that right now, and it will become clearer with what he says next, he's talking about the intention behind what he's doing,
Hmm.
because he's
yeah,
just locked. He's just locked his accuser into saying, you are doing the wrong thing and you're doing it on purpose. And he's about to
Hmm.
smash that to pieces.
Yeah,
yeah. That's a good point. Um, but I think it's a strategic mistake if he wanted to live, which I'm not saying he did. But
Oh, that will be a big discussion towards the end of
yeah,
the
because
the
to
address of that.
me, yeah, to me, it's how do I say this? Um, well, yeah, I'm just going to speak, and if I say a heresy, sorry. But okay. So it kind of reminds me a little bit of like when you look at the Cain and Abel explanation of like two different types of spirit or heart that's going on. We have like one that isn't good and one that is good, and then similarly when Jesus is arrested and obviously crucified without any charge being able to be stuck against him. I think Socrates is in a similar vein where, in what he kind of refers to in the Republic, of trying to be the just man, and by trying to be the just man, essentially, what did he say? You get your eyes ripped out and crucified, or something like that, if you try and be the just man, because the world will tear you
mm.
down. So I think his answer is, if you are a just man, why would you do wrong to your neighbor? Because then they're going to repay you back in kind.
Yeah,
But I think his audience and the people coming after him, none of those people would consider, would even have that vantage point. They would not even be looking through the world through that lens, because they're not trying to pursue virtue and they're not trying to be the just man. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
totally.
Yeah, that's a huge. Yeah, you kind of nailed it, man. That's a huge theme throughout all of Plato. Like that was
Yeah.
right through that was an underlying theme right through the Republic. And what I actually really find really interesting about this, and what I like, one of the things I really like about it, is um, this is his theory in practice. And then you've
Mm.
also got to remember at the start
Yeah.
of this, how you remember at the start of this, he goes, "I'm not going to try to basically in layman's terms, like I'm not going to try to persuade you. I'm not going to use fancy language like all these people. I'm just going to tell you the truth."
Mm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's interesting.
So you're
But
right.
yeah, I
Um,
yeah.
you're, I, you're right. I think the way to simplify it is, I think what he just said is a good argument, but that doesn't mean it's a persuasive argument.
Mm.
And that's the difference between Socrates and the sophists.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah.
a. Could you say it's a virtuous argument, but not a successful argument?
Yeah, that's another way to say it, I guess.
Yeah. All
I
right.
mean, I was gonna say you could say it's a true argument, um, rather than a persuasive one. But then we could quibble over definitions. But
Yeah. I think we all kind of are on the same page there to a degree, as close as we can be, on the same page.
Yeah.
Okay, I've forgotten where I was up to. Where are we up to?
It will be clear to you.
well, if
And
we're all on the same page, we quite literally
so,
give you the number.
yeah, are we up to and when you accuse me? That bit.
It will be very clear, I think.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
it will
you're
be
right.
very
Yep.
clear to you.
Yep. Okay. All right, I'll read this bit. It will be very clear to you, Athenians, as I was saying, that Miletus has no care at all, great or small, about the matter. But still, I should like to know, Miletus, in what I am affirmed to corrupt the young. I suppose you mean, as I infer from your indictment, I hope I said that right, that I teach them not to acknowledge the gods which the state acknowledges, but some other new divinities or spiritual agencies in their stead. These are the lessons by which I corrupt the youth, as you say. Yes, that I say emphatically. Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, keep going.
Okay. Then by the gods, Miletus, of whom we are speaking, tell me and the court, in somewhat plainer terms, what you mean. For I do not as yet understand whether you affirm that I teach other men to acknowledge some gods, and therefore that I do believe in gods, and am not an entire atheist. This you do not lay to my charge, but only you say that they are not the same gods which the city recognizes. The charge is that they are different gods. Or do you mean that I am an atheist simply, and a teacher of atheism? I mean the latter, that you are a complete atheist. We'll pause there. He's an atheist.
Oh, I just said a moment ago that he's about to smash that thing apart, but I must have missed it already. What I was referring to is where he says basically the court has no jurisdiction over me if I didn't do it intentionally.
Ah, yeah.
Sure.
Where he's like, you've only got two possibilities, and if I didn't do it intentionally, then you've got no jurisdiction. Anyway, sorry, I missed that earlier. But
No.
so he moves on to the atheist thing.
Yeah.
Quick question: did I say indictment correctly?
Indictment.
Indictment. Yeah. I'm just trying to. I'm like, I don't know. I've not read that word before. I'm sure I've got many other things wrong, and people who have many pieces of paper who are listening to me, if they can be this far into the show and not be frustrated, are probably just shaking their head, going, "Look at this yobbo."
I'm sure there's like a really interesting academic story as to why there's a C in that word, but it's there.
Hashtag English. Yeah.
You can just take credence in the fact that you've got Socrates, who's already been up there, saying that he's going to speak plainly, mate. So
Yeah, correct.
It's okay, right? But you can't be Tim the Sophist anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel a bit like Ali G, where he's like, respecte. Anyway. Okay, so
So Socrates is a atheist.
he's having a crack at Miletus again. Miletus the elitist. Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, he's already contradicted himself because he frame the indictment earlier that he doesn't believe in the gods of the state, but he believes in some other gods, and it's like,
Yep.
And then he goes, "Well, you're a complete atheist." So he's already Miletus is already contradicting himself right there. So
100%. But
as Trump would say, it's a witch hunt. Witch hunt.
But this is the stuff, because like Socrates always likes to get to the specifics, right? And so he's trying to get Miletus to commit to exactly what what it is that the charge is, so that we can talk about this and start to get to the bottom of it. It's probably gone a slightly different direction than maybe what Socrates was thinking from the get-go, but I'm a complete atheist. I wasn't expecting that. Okay, let's talk about that now. You might have just made my job a
That's an
lot easier.
extraordinary statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Hmm.
Interesting. It hadn't occurred to me that being an atheist would be such a big problem back then. Like ever until reading this. Do you guys? Because I guess because there were so many gods, I just sort of thought, if you believe in one or 50 or three or like tomato, potato, like why would not believing any be a problem? It's interesting.
I think it's probably just the charge of corrupting the youth, but that's linked. I think that you're preaching atheism, I think, is what they're sort of saying. So it's probably like you're right, Tim. If they in their own personal life maybe had a different set of beliefs, probably no one would care. But if they're out there sort of allegedly, spreading the word of atheism, and if that's going against, because it sounds like church and state is linked at this point in time, right? So if you're out there trying to turn people against, well, from the way they're speaking, it sort of sounds like it, like the gods of the city, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
So
you're right.
So if the city has gods, and church and state must be linked, and so
Yeah,
it's
and I think different cities had different gods as well. So I
yeah,
think
true.
I don't know how much bearing that would put on it, but it's actually, well, I don't know. I don't know that much about history, but I do know that it's only been in like the last 150 to 200 years that English common law has done away with the idea that it's okay to be an atheist. Like, I've brought in the idea that it's okay to be an atheist, because in English common law used to say if you're an atheist, you can't give evidence in court because you had to swear. Yeah, you had to take an oath before God. And it's like, well, if you don't believe in God, then how do we know that you're going to tell us the truth? So they just had common law that basically said if you're an atheist, then your word's not is worthless. So that's pretty foreign to our society, but it's only pretty recently that atheism has sort of become publicly acceptable, from what I can tell.
Interesting.
All right, keep reading. What's an extraordinary statement? Why do you think so, Miletus? Do you mean that I do not believe in the godhead of the sun or moon, like other men? I assure you, judges, that he does not, for he says that the sun is stone and the moon earth. Friend Miletus, you think that you are accusing Anaxagoras, and you have but a bad opinion of the judges if you fancy them illiterate to such a degree as not to know that these doctrines are found in the books of Anaxagoras, the Clazomenian, which are full of them. And so, forsooth, the youth are said to be taught them by Socrates, when they are not unfrequently exhibitions of them at the theatre. It says in brackets here, probably in allusion to Aristophanes, who caricatured, and to Euripides, who borrowed the notions of Anaxagoras, as well as to other dramatic poets. And also in brackets it says the price of admission was 1 drachma at the most. End of brackets. And they might pay their money and laugh at Socrates if he pretends to father these extraordinary views. And so, Miletus, you really think that I do not believe in any god? I swear by Zeus that you believe absolutely in none at all.
So, in my usual form, I dived in and looked at some of this history on Anaxagoras.
I was going to ask you if you did.
Enlighten us, go.
So he's an interesting cat, and he was a philosopher / scientist. I suppose those things might have been a little bit more blurry back then, but he was around during the time of Socrates, and yeah, he proposed some pretty interesting things from a sort of scientific background, but they were contrary to popular thought. So he did say that the sun was a mass of red hot metal, and that the moon was earthly, and that the stars were fiery stones. So that's why Socrates is kind of referencing those specific things, because that's basically the charges that are getting drummed up. Um, I'll keep talking about this guy, but then I'll say where that reference came from. Um, yeah, this guy was sort of actually quite interesting too. He was able to predict a meteorite fall, and
Nice.
give the first explanation of what an eclipse was. So a true explanation of what that is. Also came up with some other concepts, including nous, which is like a link between like intellect and perception and stuff in the mind. We had a couple of other like really interesting off-base sort of stuff too. The idea of panspermia, and that kind of links in a little bit to something we were talking about off air beforehand. So this was kind of like an idea that the universe or the Earth was formed by matter that was spreading sort of outwards through the universe, and just kind of gathered like materials together to eventually kind of form the Earth, and that in a way, like the Earth is kind of seeded by almost like alien stuff that sort of come in and I suppose seeded the planet to spawn Earth, right? So you could see why this would be pretty contradictory to their idea of philosophy of the gods and all that sort of thing. And this links back into, do you remember we were talking about that play the other week?
Cloud.
There was
Yeah.
the Cloud with the Aristophanes. So that's where they pulled those ideas, and they were lampooning Socrates, but it wasn't actually Socrates who'd said any of this stuff. It's this other geezer. So this is the frustration that Socrates has got, because he's like, man, you guys are taking the piss out of me in this shitty one drachmy play, and it wasn't even me who said that crap. It's this other dude, and you guys are spamming me with this stuff. I didn't even freaking say it, man. Like, how dumb are you that you're believing this like one drachmy comedy as though it's like real life, dude?
It's like you've watched a deep fake of me, and now you're saying it's me.
Fake news. Fake news.
Fake news indeed. Actually, here you go. Random thought question: would Socrates be banned on Twitter? Go.
Yes.
Yes.
Even now under Musk?
Yes.
He'd be reinstated, maybe.
Who would get banned first, Socrates or Alex Jones?
I don't know.
That's got Ruben thinking now.
What gets you banned quicker? Like,
I reckon it'd be Alex Jones these days.
you know, truth or untruth? What gets you banned quicker?
Yeah, they're polar opposites. Yeah, Twitter's a weird place right now. Anyway. All right, so look, yeah. It's interesting that they put that comment in there in the brackets. That was helpful because it gives you the context about it being that cheap one drachma show. I thought
Well,
that was
I wonder
useful.
if that, if that was just Plato's notation there. I assume it was.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Obviously, our book doesn't tell us.
Actually, I don't know. I assumed it was the translator, but I could be wrong.
See, the only reason I didn't think it's a translator is because I would assume that if that were the case, they might sort of highlight it a little bit differently. Yeah.
Yeah, that could be right.
Or something. Yeah.
Because in some ways, I thought it might have been like Plato kind of adding weight to this dialogue by just pointing out what a shit play that stuff was, right? Like it's just some popcorn cinema sort of thing, just to keep the proletariat sort of happy, and like I don't know, it's just rubbish basically.
But I also read it like not just that, but that he's saying it's in these books that you guys all read.
Yeah,
you don't burn the books. You're not going after that guy, even if I did say them. So they're in those books.
Well, actually, I'll clarify. That guy did actually get exiled So
There you go.
yeah, so he did get kicked off Twitter, ancient Twitter. So those mean tweets got him banned from the Agora. But no, he was printing those materials and selling the books and stuff. And at some stage, yeah, he got thrown in jail and then exiled. Kept
Wow.
writing though, apparently, but yeah.
All right, I'll read the next part. Let's go. Nobody will believe you, Miletus. And I am pretty sure that you do not believe yourself. I cannot help thinking, men of Athens, that Miletus is reckless and impudent, and that he has written this indictment. How do you say that word? Oh, you're muted. Hang on. How do I say that word? Indictment.
Indictment.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This indictment in a spirit of mere wantonness and youthful bravado. Has he not compounded a riddle, thinking to try me? He said to himself, I shall see whether the wise Socrates will discover my factitious contradiction, or whether I shall be able to deceive him and the rest of them. For he certainly does appear to me to contradict himself in the indictment as much as if he said that Socrates is guilty of not believing in the gods, and yet of believing in them. But this is not like a person who is in earnest. I should like you, O men of Athens, to join me in examining what I conceive to be his inconsistency, and do you, Miletus, answer. And I must remind the audience of my request that they would not make a disturbance if I speak in my accustomed manner. Okay, I'll keep going. Did ever man, Miletus, believe in the existence of human things and not human beings? I wish, men of Athens, that he would answer, and not be always trying to get up an interruption. Did ever any man believe in horsemanship and not in horses, or in flute playing and not in flute players? No, my friend. I will answer to you and to the court, as you refuse to answer for yourself. There is no man who ever did. But now, please to answer the next question. Can a man believe in spiritual and divine agencies and not in spirits or demigods? He cannot.
So do you reckon? I'm assuming because he goes, I remind the audience of my request that they would not make disturbances if I speak in the accustomed manner. And then later on, he's like, if only Miletus would answer my questions rather than try to get up an interruption. I'm assuming that at that point the crowd's starting to get a bit restless, and Miletus is just trying to appeal to the crowd to get fired up.
100%. That's how I read it too.
Yeah.
So again, with horses. It's a great, because when I first read that first question, it kind of, I'm like, what's he on about here? Where he goes, did ever man, Miletus, believe in the existence of human things and not human beings? When I first read that, I was like, what? And then when I got to the horse bit, I'm like, I get it. I get what you're saying.
Yep. Yeah. How can you believe in one without the other? Yeah.
At what point did that penny drop for you guys? Did you get it straight away when he said human things but not human beings?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, same. I needed the horse thing.
Yeah.
And he talks about flutes too. We talked about flutes in the Republic too.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. Well, side note, my niece had her birthday recently, and one of the gifts that she wanted was apparently some cartoon character. Looks a little bit like a fox, and they've got this magical flute, which is basically a recorder. And so my wife purchased this for my little niece, and when I saw it, I just went straight to my brother-in-law, I never saw this gift. This is not me. Because who gives a kid a recorder? Seriously?
Yeah, it's the devil's instrument for sure.
Oh my
Nobody
goodness.
needs that in their house.
I'm like, that's no flute. That's a recorder. It was like that Obi-Wan Kenobi moment. That's no moon.
Nice.
Yeah, okay.
I think he's nicely got Meletus on the ropes here. That uh, you know, can a man believe in spiritual and divine agencies and not in spirits or demigods? And they say, well, no, of course you can't. So he's got him set up nicely. So get ready for the sucker punch.
Yeah, you got an answer out of him too, which took a while by the looks of it, because he had to give
Yeah.
like 4 examples before he finally went, okay.
Well, maybe
Alright,
he's a
I'll
bit
keep
ballooned by all the cracks of his youthful bravado and what have you. Basically,
Yes,
trying to point out his immaturity. So
I'm going to try and use that phrase at work this week when someone makes a mistake. I'm going to say that, well, that came from a spirit of mere wantonness and youthful bravado. See,
wantonness is a phrase that needs to re-enter the vocab for sure.
and youthful
Yeah, we're gonna
bravado.
bring it back.
They need to come back. They're awesome. All right, here we go. So after Melita says he cannot, we continue from there. How lucky I am to extracted that answer by the assistance of the court. But then you swear in the indictment that I teach and believe in divine or spiritual agencies, new or old, no matter for that. At any rate, I believe in spiritual agencies. So you say and swear in the affidavit that, and yet if I believe in divine beings, how can I help believing in spirits or demigods? Must I not? To be sure I must, and therefore I may assume that your silence gives consent. Now what are spirits or demigods? Are they not either gods or the sons of gods? Certainly they are. But this is what I call the fictitious riddle invented by you. The demigods, all spirits are gods. And you say first that I do not believe in gods, and then again that I do believe in gods. That is, if I believe in demigods. For if the demigods are the illegitimate sons of gods, whether by the nymphs or by any other mothers of whom they are said to be the sons, what human being will ever believe that there are no gods if they are the sons of gods? You might as well affirm the existence of mules and deny that of horses and asses. Such nonsense, Meletus, could only have been intended by you to make trial of me. You have put this into the indictment because you had nothing real of which to accuse me, but no one who has a particle of understanding will ever be convinced by you that the same men can believe in divine and superhuman things, and yet not believe that there are gods and demigods and heroes. A particle of understanding.
That's all you need. Just a particle. Well, he's I think ramming home the point here that the argument's pretty loose that old Meletus has thrown at him. So I don't think there's much left there to hold on to. But let's see if Meletus can still stand steadfast on that argument.
I like the reference to mules, horses, and asses.
Yeah, I wonder if in ancient Greek, asses still has that same sort of connotation, like it can be sort of taken either way, right? In the English language. I do wonder if that sort of worked in ancient Greek as well.
I don't think he said, we're looking at a mule and behold, there's an ass standing in front of me. Like, I don't think he went that far, but
just casually gesturing,
yes, an ass.
Yeah.
All right, I'll proceed a little bit further. Okay, I've said enough in answer to the charge of Meletus. Any elaborate defence is unnecessary, but I know only too well how many are the enmities which I have incurred, and this is what will be my destruction if I am destroyed. Not Meletus, nor yet Anytus, but the envy and detraction of the world, which has been the death of many good men, and will probably be the death of many more. There is no danger of my being the last of them. Just
Hmm.
pause there for now. So
Yeah,
I think
that
that
line's
comes back to what
creepy.
I was talking about before.
Yeah, yeah, it does. I mean,
Hmm.
yeah, 100% does. I love that little section. I think it's epic.
Yeah.
And I think, like you were saying before, like you can kind of tell that he either suspects this is not going to go his way, or he doesn't care that it's not going to go his way, or probably more to the point, he's decided that this is a sacrifice I have to make.
Yeah,
I, I do agree with you. I think he's gone into this expecting that he's not going to get off of these charges, because you can tell, like, with a lot of the way that the reading is, and we'll get to a few more sort of bits where he's pretty clear on where he thinks it's going to go. And I think that little snippet really just kind of rams at home, kind of like, whether I'm right or wrong, it doesn't really matter. Like, you guys are going to make your mind up. And there's been plenty of good people who have been shot down like this before. And I won't be the last of them either, I'm sure.
Yeah. Have you still got access to another version, another translation of this at all?
I don't have it handy on me, no.
No, that's all right.
Um,
Because I'm curious when he says,
I
"But
can
the
check.
envy and detraction," he says, "But the envy and detraction of the world will be the death of me," or whatever it is. It's quite interesting that he uses the term "the world."
yeah.
I'm wondering if that was a translation thing, or whether it's just indicative of his whole like philosophy, like he's all this sort of transcended truth and beauty
Mm,
that's beyond the material. Because that's a term that gets used quite regularly in the Bible. Like when it talks about the world,
mm,
um, it's talking about the world in opposition to. It's not talking about the world as in the planet Earth, but as in the spiritual world, as in opposition to goodness and truth and God. So I thought it was interesting that that word was actually used in that section. I wonder how much of it is just the way we translate it from our Western perspective now, or
mm,
like how explicit that actually is.
mm.
Because I do
No,
think
for
it
sure.
does tie into his philosophy, like he's all that stuff about coming out of the cave and looking at the sun and the sun being the true light and all that sort of stuff, all that sort of esoteric stuff. So
Mm, mm. Not for sure. I agree
I
with
have
that.
found another translation. Whereabouts on the page of our version is that section, Ruben?
It's at the third paragraph on page 25, where it's the start of that paragraph is, I have said enough in answer to that charge, Miletus. It's about the third line down.
that's all right. If it's a hassle to try
Oh,
to
I
find
see.
it, it's
I
all
see.
good. But
Yeah. Okay, so this translation says, I do not think, gentlemen, of the injury that it requires a prolonged defence to prove that I am not guilty of the charges in Melita's deposition, but this is sufficient. On the other hand, you know that what I said earlier is true, that I am very unpopular with many people. This will be my undoing if I am undone, not Meletus or Anytus, but the slanders and envy of many people. This has destroyed many other good men, and will, I think, continue to do so. There is no danger that it will stop at me.
Wow, that's quite a different translation there, hey?
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I think it's very similar. Apart from that term, the world, which kind of confirms, well, not confirms, but it makes me think. Yeah, maybe there's a little bit of liberty taken there with the translation, but I don't know.
Mm.
Still, yeah, the message is essentially the same. Well, guys, we're at well over 50 minutes, so we were planning to pause a bit later, but I think that's a good place to pause until next week.
I think so
Because the
too.
next
Yeah.
two paragraphs are pretty chunky, and I've underlined many things. I really like the
Yeah.
next two paragraphs. So let's wander on down to the good old pub philosophers. Yes, the pub philosophers. So I've still got a little bit of beer left. I've got maybe a fifth of a bit
There you go.
less. So that's
Good
good.
man.
Yeah, so we've been chatting a lot over the last few days on Messenger about different things, and we started having a good old chat about some of this, what do you call it, sacred geometry stuff.
Hmm.
So, Lachlan, you haven't watched the one I was expressing about today, but you have seen some of the previous things.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just, because we're reading Plato again, they were pretty big on the old geometry. I think that's what's made me go down that rabbit hole again, just to have a look at what's there. And yeah, it's a good rabbit hole. It's fun. Do you guys enjoy going down that sort of rabbit hole?
For sure.
How about you,
I
Rubes?
think.
What are your thoughts?
I find it interesting in a cursory sort of way, but I, j- I just to really understand it, I have to sit down and really nut it out because like it seems complicated to me. I'm not a math guy.
Oh, okay.
Tim's got a spreadsheet for that. It's okay.
Yeah, yeah. I actually I wonder if I could do a spreadsheet equivalent for that. Um, Look, my thoughts of it are that there's something there, but how useful is that something is the first question. And but the second question is more, okay, there's something there, but what was its purpose originally for people coming up with these things? And so I was saying to you guys before, to me, like this sacred geometry stuff of circles representing creation story and then representing all these different things, it feels like another type of stained glass window to me. Like it's just a way that people sort of put an idea into something symbolic, and they're using these symbols to represent some sort of philosophical idea or some sort of story. So that's kind of where I'm sort of looking at it through that lens of not that it I'm not looking at it as like evidence for something. I'm looking at it as this is how people communicated via that tool. Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, they do say that mathematics is the universal language.
Yeah.
Um, and I think even on like, is it was it Voyager, the probe that we sort of sent out
Yeah.
into the universe with like information about man and all that sort of thing. I think it uses some mathematical like equations as some of the material that's provided on there because there's a understanding that like language is something that's really complicated to understand between different peoples, but mathematics is a universal sort of function, and no matter what sort of basis a potential other society could come from, it would need to be able to understand mathematics to be able to, I don't know, travel the universe or something like that, right?
I
I
wonder
Um,
if
think
that's
that's a weird
why.
assumption. Oh, sorry, go Ribs.
I wonder if that's why perhaps some numbers have been considered sacred by some people in some cultures in the past because, like language, I guess, is representative. Words can represent different things and have different meanings and that sort of stuff. Whereas numbers seem like they're more fundamental in a way. So I wonder if maybe people looked at it and they're just like, oh, that's that's a higher level truth or a more fundamental truth than other things like language.
I think it's also like, they sort of talk about like a high level of like scientific advancement is indistinguishable from magic, right? And if the gap is sufficiently different, it could seem like some otherworldly information. So perhaps back in the ancient times, as they're starting to unravel some like these, principles of mathematics, maybe it did seem like information that was kind of like handed on from the gods or something, because it's like, how can there be these kind of correlations? So I'm just thinking maybe it was just kind of the mindset that they were at that point in time could possibly sort of um, bring that view. So I think that's why it's like someone like Pythagoras could have, been someone so amazing in their culture because they're like, is he in touch with the divine or something like that? He's able to kind of extract this kind of thing. I don't know. I
Yeah,
think that's might have been the time. I don't know if I think for everyone sort of playing at home too, because we didn't really explain this in much sort of detail, but there's some like reoccurring patterns and units of measurement and all this sort of thing that can sort of appear naturally in nature. Um, and Tim sort of talked about this sort of creation sphere sort of thing as well that sort of has some interesting alignment, I suppose, natural sort of form. Um, but it's patterns though, right? Like, so it's reoccurring patterns.
yeah,
Um,
Yeah, that's right. But it's also like, let me throw a spanner in the works slightly about the mathematics thing. So part of what I've been learning about lately, numbers used to be not separate from the language. So you didn't have, like with English, how we've got our alphabet and then we have our numbers. They were incorporated together. So, and I think it was Indian and something else languages thousands of years ago. I don't know exactly when that started separating those two things. So I think the principle of numbers is universal in, like, we know that this is like one, and that's two, and rose by any other name is a rose. But I think assuming that zeros and ones, or 1 to 10, would be interpreted by another civilization that hasn't come through our journey of language is maybe inaccurate. They might still not understand it, like us with the glyphs on the Egyptian walls and that sort of stuff. It might not make sense to them. But regardless, I wonder if that's why, like that story of the Tower of Babel in the Bible, where once the languages got confused, they couldn't keep building the building. I wonder if that's because there wasn't a separation between numbers and language. So then when you have 10 languages where names are numbers or words are numbers, and you don't know what those words mean, you can't figure out what the numbers are. So then everyone separates. So I wonder if by our languages making a distinguishment between numbers and letters, we now have this universal language where people who speak different languages from all over the world can work on numbers together because it is independent of the actual language that you speak and write. Do you get what I mean?
hmm.
You follow, Rubes, or you look a bit confused?
no, I follow. But if you're talking about it in terms of a cause for the separation, there are sort of alternative explanations for why they would separate that are
Yep.
equally plausible.
Have you
Like,
got
for
one in
instance,
front of mind?
well, I mean, you can't. If you're just talking about a cause for why if their language is confused, why they would separate, it would just be because you would find people that you could speak to and understand, and then you would form groups. And then as soon as you start forming groups, then you've got all sorts of power hierarchies and things that go on. And as the story goes, they were part of a big city, right? So you'd have
Yep.
people trying to communicate with each other, finding people they could communicate with, and they'd be setting up and trying to get a hold of as much power and wealth as they could because they can't trust the other people. Like, it's more of a, would you just call
Yeah.
it like a human explanation? Although I would suggest that what you're talking about is a very interesting idea. I hadn't really thought about that. That's interesting.
Maybe both can be true at the same time. Maybe it was a combination of all those problems. But it just
Yeah,
occurred to me learning that this year. I was like, oh, maybe that contributed to why that example in the Bible of the Tower of Babel couldn't get finished, because once the languages are mixed up, no one's math aligned. I mean, how does one carpenter go to an engineer and the measurements are different words and you don't know what that is? And like, it just would completely confuse the crap out of everybody.
Yeah, well, I mean, because you didn't have your standardized measurement yet. You might have had math, but actual measurement hadn't been standardized. So
I
you
think
could say,
measurement might have been, but because like the pyramids are extremely accurate, and
Oh no,
The megalithic
sure.
constructions are. Yeah.
But what I mean is, if you've got people coming from different places who have learnt different things,
Yeah.
you can have a metric foot, a whatever foot.
Yeah.
So they may have their own slight variations. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's
Um,
differences between like the British foot and the Greek or Roman foot. I think there is a
hmm,
slight difference there. Um, yeah, you're right. That would be a contributing factor as well. I know, just got
yeah,
my brain thinking. I was like, oh, I wonder if that's influenced that as well.
hmm, maybe so.
Oh well, I'm going to keep going down the geometry rabbit hole for a little while because I kind of like as I start looking at that stuff, I can kind of see how someone as sharp as Plato would take these ideas of all these different patterns and shapes within shapes, and that they would play with that.
Well,
I can see it
particularly,
be a thing.
yeah, particularly when someone thinks the way that he did about abstractions. Like he was very much about ideas almost being uh, prime, like have ideas having primacy over things. You know, what I mean, like mind was over matter very much in the way he thought. So you can see why those sorts of ideas would be very influential for him, I would assume. Or
I'm
maybe it was the
gonna
other way around. Maybe he thought the way he did because of those ideas. I don't know.
I'm gonna suggest something that could be a little bit controversial because I'm a complete noob. Um, but I know that Plato talks about Solon going to Egypt and he gets told about Atlantis and all that sort of stuff. But the Egyptians knew all this shape stuff, and it's said that they passed it on to the Greeks, and then Socrates got his hands on it, which is why they're called Plato, which is why they're called the Platonic shapes or Socratic shapes. I can't remember now. Is it Platonic? Platonic shapes.
Not sure.
Anyway, one of the two shapes. So I wonder if Solon got some of that information from the Egyptians as well. I don't know. I want to
Well, he
investigate that.
did he mention Pythagoras in the Republic?
Yeah, he
Yep,
did.
yep.
He did. So he might
He
have.
did.
Would you assume he met Pythagoras, or did he met people?
It's
Did
different
Pythagoras
time.
predate him? Yeah, I don't know.
I think Pythagoras came before um, Socrates, but it sounded like the teachings of it were continuing or something like that.
Yeah,
But
so he might have had
Solon,
contact with the cult that came out of Pythagoras or something.
yeah, but Solon was a few generations before Socrates or Plato. Sorry. So yeah, I'm gonna look at that. I'm sure someone would have asked that question before. I just haven't looked it up yet. Anyway,
Yeah,
so you guys
interesting.
know what sort of spam you're going to be getting from me over the next few weeks. It's going to be about these shapes. No,
Awesome. Look forward to
be
it.
quiet. Be quiet, Siri. Siri's eavesdropping on me. All right, well, I reckon we wrap it up there. Unless you guys have anything further to add.
No, all good.
No, that's right, brother. You guys have a good week.
All right, thanks everyone for listening. Remember, the Republic wasn't built in a day, and neither middle-aged men. And catch you guys next episode. Bye.
Okay. Cheers.